Hey Writing and Schooly gang. So this isn't all of them, but today we're going to talk about my co-stars. This video is all about what it's like to live with 17 furry, scaly, slimy roommates in a school bus. If you've seen even one of my other videos, Schooly or Writing, you know one personal thing about me and my wife. We love animals. Not cats, not dogs, animals. And we love them a lot. There are actually two big reasons. I do a sign-off at the end of each of my videos with one of our critters. One being to give you guys some personal insight into who I am, so you know who it is delivering this Schooly writing help for you, and to help you get to know them a little bit better. If even one person's heart is changed from this video, and you know, somebody who previously thought rats were completely gross says, you know, maybe a rat someday, then this will have been worth it. If someone says, maybe I can have a reptile in a Schooly, this will have been worth it. That's a life changed forever, and that's always worth it. But one does not simply start with 17 animals. So, let's talk about that little escalation as I introduce each member of our perfect patchwork family. Adopting animals has been just one part of this kind of crazy journey I've been on with my partner, Katie. And that adopting animals part of it all began with this beautiful heifer. This is Franklin, renamed Aretha Franklin after we found out she had grown way past the size that a smaller male would. You won't see her as a guest star in my videos too often because she's not the biggest fan of being out of water. As you can see by the fact that she just peed all over me. Yes, Franklin was the first critter that Katie and I welcomed into our family. And we bought her. This was well before we had educated minds on environmentalism and adopting. We got her from a reptile expo when we were in college. They were selling turtles that were absolutely undersized. Franklin was the size of a hatchling when we bought her. I had no idea that that was a problem. But we did raise her from that size, and now she's fully grown. But a lot of people make that amateur mistake of buying turtles when they're super tiny because they're so cute, and they don't realize how big they get, how big their tank's gonna get, and all their needs as they grow older. This reptile expo was the kind of business that we would never have supported if we had the brains in our heads now back then. This salesman knew what he was doing. Franklin was so tiny and she had those cute eyes, she was adorable, she didn't need that big of a cage, such low maintenance, and yeah. Well, I've always been a sap, always will be. But getting Franklin turned out to be a beautiful mistake. We were worried about moving her into the bus when we moved into it because of the water sloshing around from her tank and the UVB light, the temperature. Here's Franklin's specially designed tank. You can see up here, there's the lid is fully enclosed either with mesh or just by the plastic so that her light can shine through it, which does run off our solar power, no problem. And we never have problem with water splashing out of here. It either hits the grate or the plastic and pretty much stays inside the tank if we need to drive. And the water stays at a comfortable room temperature for her because we keep it really warm back here for all the critters with our electric space heater. Sometime after we bought Franklin, we fell in love with the first animal we'd ever adopt. You've met her many times, my faithful teaching assistant who tries to run when I pick her up, but always wants to be in the shot when I don't. This is Holly, in case you haven't met her before. Holly was the perfect cat for us. We found her in a really rough situation. Her original family had her until she was 5 from being a kitten. They had 2 dogs that really didn't like her and pretty much chased her around and kept her in the upstairs bathroom of their house. So they wanted to find a new home for her, and that home thankfully was us. We adopted Holly in college. She lived in the dorm room with us, and she was a perfect fit right away. She was already used to the smaller space, so it didn't really bother her to be in a dorm room, plus she had a common room to roam too. But she really just always stayed close to us, always wanted to be in our laps and near us, and over time we've seen her really come out of her shell. She never, when we first got her, she never would have sat with me for this long. But now she's a huge cuddle bug, as you've seen in my other videos. She wants to be all over me all the time, especially when I'm doing something or paying attention to, say, the camera instead of her. She's a total angel though. She never does anything wrong except fling litter across the entire bus when she uses the litter box, but I can forgive that because everything else about her is just perfect. It is a little angel. Going back to the reptile expo, Franklin wasn't the only friend we brought home from there. Unfortunately, she is the only one who lived a full life. We also bought our first rat from this reptile expo. When Katie and I were ready to move in together, we decided to adopt our first pair of rats, Emma and Lily. These two sisters were so freaking sweet and smart, and just everything about them was perfect. We had them trained to come in and out of their cage on a little bridge. It wasn't too long before our hearts opened up to, you know, okay, we have a big cage, maybe we could get a third rat. Believe it or not, it was my mother who came with me to adopt this little rat, who actually saw a fourth one there and, you know, thought she was cute, asked the rescue guy to take the rat out, and we played with her. And at the time we were living with my mother, so I didn't want to, you know, push the envelope. She wasn't too crazy about rats to begin with. But after she saw this little brown rat, Penny, she said, we can't leave her. We gotta take both. So we did, and we had 4 rats. Then Katie adopted a 5th one for my birthday, and so established our baseline of having 5 rats. We sometimes have less, sometimes have more. 5 used to be the limit, but that limit has since been broken. Since I have more time, I can make my own schedule, I can manage a little bit more critters at once. Although it does get to be a handful with this growing list. So there's something really special about watching an old rat that you've had for most of its life teach a young rat the ways of the family, the ways of the cage. There are certain things that we do, little husbandry things, that just make our jobs as rat parents easier. Like having them come when we snap, climb up our hands to come out of the cage, climb down our arms to go back in the cage. We had to teach our first group of rats to do that, but since then we haven't had to teach any future groups. We're now in our 3rd generation of rats, and they pick that stuff up almost automatically. They get little nudges here and there from the older ones. You know, they really do show each other, like, okay, this is how we do it here. This is how we use the playset. This is how we come in and out of the cage. It's very interesting to see those echoes of the first 5 rats that ever touched our lives in these newer babies that we have that are so tiny and adorable. So in the intro video, you saw Finnegan and JJ, 2 of our older rats, because I knew I could trust them with the others around. Here you'll see our 2 newest rats, our little babies that are learning the tricks of the trade from their older siblings. This is Sage and Falafel. Sage has been getting really good with going down my arm when I snap. Let's see if I can get her to show you what she's doing. Sage, go say hi. Go say hi to the camera. Here's what that little maneuver will look like when our little ones have more experience. Go, JJ, go. Go say hi to the camera. Alright, come on back. Good boy. Soon after the rats came the mice. You'd be astonished how many people think that mice are just baby rats. But they're not. They're a completely different species, and they actually behave totally differently too. Which is what makes it very interesting and fun to have both. Whereas rats may develop more of a snuggly personality as they mature, this is not very common in mice at all, unless they've been hand-raised. It's not that they don't like you or trust you, they still want to come out of the cage and spend time with you, but they tend to sit still a lot less. They want to be moving, they want to be walking. If they're on you, they're going to be walking over every which part of you. So this is Tofu. She's the only girl that was awake when I went to go get them out of the cage. Mice love to explore and investigate new things. I find mice to be particularly interesting because I really enjoy their sense of fun and the things that they like to do. They just really love to climb on stuff and crawl inside of things and jump on things. If you add something unfamiliar to their cage, they'll investigate it within the next 30 seconds. They just love to see what's new. They're also not afraid to climb on the back of your cat, so keep a close eye on them. I also really enjoy their company because there's so much they have to overcome to trust a human. The natural instinct of being picked up from above by a predator, you know, that's how you pick them up. They're so much bigger than them. And they have to overcome that fear of being stalked when, you know, you stand outside their cage and get ready to get them. And yet, they still can learn to trust you completely and even enjoy being around you. It's a very special kind of bond. I had no intention of putting this list together in order of social acceptability, but next we're going to talk about cockroaches. This is Morticia, one of our Madagascar hissing cockroaches. She happens to enjoy being handled a lot more than her roommate, so she'll be the one joining us for this demonstration. And hissers are notoriously easy to work with as far as cockroaches go, And it's actually a real shame how they're kind of abused in that way in movies and TV shows, because people see this little bug and they think of the bug they saw on TV that horrified them. But really, the reason you see this one on TV is because they're so easy to work with. I mean, look, I'm swinging her around, I'm petting her back while I'm talking, and she's totally fine with it. Here's the truth about roaches. They are not dirty. Even the ones that you see in city apartments. They appear in dirty places because what we see as waste, they see as food. Roaches are one of nature's many cleanup schemes, and they tend to accumulate in super dirty places because it's in your unlimited supply of food. We call them dirty, but they're trying to clean up our mess. Humans are the ones that create this unnatural amount of squalor that makes so much food for them that their colonies grow beyond anything that naturally would happen in the world at large. Before you point a finger, make sure you look in the mirror. We're the dirty ones, and we need to change that. Anyway, super easy to take care of, and you can hold them if you want to. They're okay not being held if you don't hold them. And they also do a lot of really interesting social behaviors. These little bulges on the back of her head are actually horns, but they're much more pronounced on the males of the Hisser species because they butt together like bulls during mating season to compete for mates. The winner perches on a really high rock, and the females literally circle him to see who he'll pick, while the males that were defeated circle outside the circle of females to pick up anyone who isn't chosen by the dominant alpha male. These are bugs we're talking about. How do they know how to do that? I think it's awesome. And I think Morticia's awesome. And for my next friend, with a few more legs than I have, this is our Florida ivory millipede, Ivy. We'll see how long I can hold on to her before I have to put her back, because she gets pretty crazy. Millipedes each have their own little personalities. We had another one named Starchy, who unfortunately passed away, who was super shy and would have been curled up into a little ball at this point. And she's just going wild, looking for the next thing she can climb. We actually have a lot more in common with millipedes than you might think. As far as we understand, they experience the same 5 senses that we do, whereas many other types of bug have either less senses, extra senses, or they experience them in just ways that are so vastly different than ours. I try to handle her a lot because she's super active and she basically paces the outside of her cage trying to climb the walls when she really wants to come out. So next time you see me, we may be talking about our 18 roommates if we can find a good friend for Ivy. We got Ivy and all of our bugs from a website called Bugs in Cyberspace. If you're curious at all about bug husbandry, you know, he has insects, arachnids, all kinds of different critters that you wouldn't normally find at a pet store. So if you're thinking about adopting a little friend like Ivy, which I highly recommend, look at her, she's a blast. Definitely go through Bugs in Cyberspace. Hey, she made it through her whole shot. Okay, so this one I kind of wasn't sure about, and it's not because I don't like lizards. Say hi, Martin. Martin's a marbled salamander, and we really weren't sure how well he'd do in the bus. He does great. He keeps warm enough, he eats for us, although he is a really poor hunter, so we have to basically drop the mealworms directly in front of him or he may not eat. As you can see, he's pretty chilled out, he's kind of sluggish. When he's not chilling, he's either burrowing or eating. But that's more than he used to do before he came to us. I couldn't be happier that we adopted Martin, the same friend of ours who runs the rescue where we got our rats. He reached out to us about this little guy because he was living in a really tiny enclosure and not doing anything. That he would literally bury himself and our friend wouldn't see him for weeks at a time. Now he's perfectly content to kind of sit out on top of the log in his enclosure, and he roams around a little bit. Still mostly chills, but he doesn't bury himself as much. He doesn't hide as much because he has a more enriching environment and he's more comfortable. Can't keep him out for too long, gotta always make sure to wet my hands so I don't take his slime coat off, but here's Martin, everybody. The most photogenic salamander I've ever seen. Last but certainly not least, one of our more recent additions to the family, Willow. She was originally from Texas, where she was somebody's lifelong companion, but they had to move into a nursing home and they could not bring her with them. So she was surrendered, unfortunately, to a kill shelter. Fortunately for her, a rescue across the country saw her on the internet and took an interest, took her in, and one of the ladies from that rescue fostered her for 8 months. Needless to say, when we came along interested in a senior dog, she had a lot of separation anxiety. but she adapted to bus life really quickly. She had no problem with the small space. She has a bit of a degenerative back disease, so she really doesn't need a lot of room to run. She likes to go on walks and go on hikes for very short times before we pack her in the backpack, but when she's here, she pretty much just sleeps. As you can see, she's perfectly content as long as she is with Katie or myself. You may hear her scuttling around or making some kind of snorting noises in some of my other videos. But that is nothing compared to when we first got her. She had such bad separation anxiety that if Katie or I even moved close to the door, she would start kind of yiping and screeching a little bit. But she's doing much better now that she trusts us and knows us, and she knows we're coming back when we walk out the door. There you have it, everybody. The whole furry, scaly, slimy, extended family. We love each one of them uniquely. Which one of our schooly pets surprised you the most? Or are you a faithful watcher so you've at least gotten acquainted with most of them throughout the course of my other videos? Are there any animals that maybe this video helped crack the door of your heart to adopting? Did you learn something about a certain animal from this video? Please leave some comments below. I'd love to connect with you guys about pets that you have or that you're thinking about. I want to know, are my followers animal lovers too? Thank you guys so much for watching, and you can support by liking, hitting the bell icon, and subscribing to my YouTube channel. Also by subscribing to my website to get updates about fun writing schooly help and my upcoming course, or becoming a patron, and all of that stuff will be in links in the description. But thank you guys so much for watching, and all the loving support you sent to me and the Roadside Writer crew here. And just in case you didn't see my Instagram post earlier this week, I will not be making a video next week. I'll be taking that time to really hunker down and work on my instructional course, the basics of plotting a novel, and also doing some research on how better to reach you guys with quality content. I want to make sure that our community here continues to grow and be engaged with the content I'm making. So, Roadside Writer and company.